Yeah.
All right, boys, you guys, we're about to start. You are going to have to be quiet as a mouse, angelic behavior, just like you did yesterday. So, Evan, you're going to have to take the wrapper off that bin trash. And then what are you going to be doing? Boys. No, give it, put it back. I want a snack. Evan and Frank, I'll be good. Read your book or your device or whatever you're going to use. Because once it says go, you cannot speak at all. And always back up. What happens?
If there's anything that I say that's like contrary to what you want, like you can, it's okay.
Don't worry about that.
A lot of this is just opinion and experience.
Yeah, that's exactly what we. Where's the Rubik's Cube? He's out too. All right, where's Bryce's? We need to find it real quick. We're starting this program right in 1 minute.
There's one in the bag.
Yeah, that's fine. And where's Bryce? Did you put yours in your bag? Bet you put it in your bag. Evan, you gotta take that out of the wrapper so it doesn't make any noise. Not in my bag. We'll find it after the program. What do you have that's gonna keep you quiet for the next hour? I know you can do it because you did it yesterday.
You did a great job yesterday.
No, you need to find a book or your tablet. Get it out right now. And it was a big mistake. I was like, oh, I won't put them in camp this week because I only had like one meeting, and then it was like,
Is there ability to pause it once you start? Or
we could. I mean, we never
well, no,
have.
I'm thinking worst case scenario. I went to the gym. I drank a lot of water, and so if I do if it's like about to be a problem, I'll.
Do you want to go run to the bathroom real quick now before we start? Or?
I feel like maybe going again will like.
I want to go.
I don't like. I don't.
No, Bryce, no.
I don't like hacks.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem.
If my secret signal will be.
Perfect. And then what I'll do is I'll mute and I'll cancel the camera, but I'll let it record because it won't hear anything, and then Anthony can just edit it.
I'm just thinking,
we got it.
Like a gallon of water an hour.
Totally.
So,
Totally get it.
I'm thinking of all the things that could happen.
You can have that.
Here. All right, you guys all set?
Oh, yeah. No. Are you boys ready? No, you can't drink those. Those are for Bryce, you can take one of those. Yeah. All right.
All right, I'll give you a thumbs up.
Are you ready to behave? The Xbox time depends on it. Okay?
I'll give you a thumbs up when you can start speaking. Okay. All right, everybody ready? Okay.
Hi, and welcome to today's Healthy Relationships Initiative Relationship Booster. Thank you for joining us for today's program. My name is Christine Murray, and I'm a professor at UNC Greensboro in the Department of Counseling and Educational Development, as well as the director of the Guilford County Healthy Relationships Initiative. The topic of our program today will be on sending kids to college with pointers for parents and for students. Just to give you a little bit of background about the Healthy Relationships Initiative, our mission is to promote happy, healthy, and safe relationships in Guilford County and beyond. And we invite you to check out our website at guilfordhri.org to learn more, as well as to connect with us on social media at GuilfordHRI. Our guest speaker for our topic on sending your kids to college is TJ Foster, and we're so excited to have you here, TJ.
So happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, and I'd love as we kind of get started, if you could just share a little bit about your background and why this topic is of interest to you.
Absolutely. So about 5 years ago, I got into the higher education arena. I came from the corporate America business arena with pharmaceuticals, and started working at High Point University as one of their admissions counselors. Quickly graduated to being the associate director of admissions there, and it was a prolific time for me. So much learning, and just having a heart for making sure that students and families really understand the gravity of what's happening when they go off to college. It's more than just a major. It's more than just classes. There's so many life skills and relational changes that take place, and so it was great to be a partner with so many families in that journey.
And I bet that's a really interesting lens into seeing what it's like for families, both the students and their parents, as they're kind of looking ahead to that college transition. So I bet you have a lot of insights to share from that. And you're also a pastor now, too, so that gives you another lens on this topic, too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So, you know, when you really think about it, working with students, working with families, even sometimes with G-Mama, you know, who, if she was funding the education, there's a pastoral component to that. You are listening to, you know, their life's heart about their child and them wanting to do well, and you're providing guidance, and that is in similarity to being a pastor.
Yeah, so looking at that kind of whole family perspective on what that might be like as families go through different transitions. So I can't wait to dig into this topic with you. So as we get started thinking about the topic of sending your kids to college, and we know this is that time of year right now, it's August, so a lot of families are really starting to think about this topic. And so whether it's sending your kid to college for the first time, or you're sending your child back to college after they've already been there for a few years, what are some of the things that are on students and parents' minds as they're looking to this transition, as well as maybe other family members like grandparents?
Absolutely. So, you know, one of the first thoughts that parents have as they are standing at the threshold to their son or daughter's room and looking at the pile of clothes in the corner, and, you know, they're saying, okay, did I get this right? Will the same morals and standards and life lessons that I tried to impart into my child, will that stick? Will they apply all of that knowledge that I've tried to give them over the last 16, 17, 18 years? Will they apply it to their life when I'm not there?
And there's probably kind of a mix of hopefulness, like I hope that it's stuck, and then also some fear, like what if it didn't stick?
I think it's a mixture of a little bit of stress and excitement. It's kind of like stress-citement. You know, the parent is also thinking about it. It's very nostalgic, the whole collegiate process. And so the parent is thinking about what happened with them in their college journey, and they're thinking about what happened with the college journey of, you know, maybe a coworker that experienced something horrible, you know, for their son or daughter at college, or maybe they're thinking, okay, you know, are they going to get a job? Do they have to stay on my payroll even after, you know, 4 years or 6 years or 8 years in school? And a lot of times parents are really thinking, is my child going to get a lunatic for a roommate? And then, right, and then my parent was thinking, oh my gosh, my son is the lunatic roommate, right? And so it kind of mirrors some of the same thoughts and concerns for the student as well. Am I going to make friends? Did I make the right decision? Am I going to the right school? Is this really going to be my major? Can I see myself doing this? How do I leave a legacy? How do I make an impact, right? And so there's this dichotomy, if you will, of looking forward while also reevaluating every decision that you made up until the time that you move into that dorm.
Yeah, so there's a lot of pressure, it sounds like, that students and their families really feel at this time to feel like, are we doing this right? And all the different aspects of the decision in that process, whether it's financial and the relationship pieces, and what's my roommate going to be like? Am I going to make friends? And that sort of thing. Are there any other sort of more unique concerns, maybe as if it's somebody who's maybe a little further along in college after as their child is kind of approaching maybe their later years in the college process? Any other thoughts that you have about that?
Well, many parents are thinking about the investment not only of time and resources, but of any of the financial investments that they made for that child, their son or daughter, to go to college. And they're wanting a return on that investment. They're wanting a return.
Yeah, and so really looking at, especially I would imagine that heightens as the students are starting to think about future career decisions. Are they going to graduate school or some sort of professional school after that? And then that can be a whole other set of concerns that might come up there too.
Correct.
So also, as you know, this is part of the Healthy Relationships Initiative, and so we pay a lot of attention to relationship and family issues. And one of the things that can really impact what that looks like in college is how far away the student goes. And so what do you see as some of the differences or the different concerns that might be present for a college student who, let's say, stays in town, in the same town as their family, or somebody who decides to really go far away?
Absolutely. I think it really depends on the initial perspective. You have students that from, you know, freshman year in high school are saying, I'm going away to school, I'm leaving to go to school. Maybe there's a history in their family of going away to school in a particular alma mater that they want to attend. And so there's a legitimate excitement about that. And there's also, there's no stigma about the distance.
Right.
Then you have some that maybe they're going to be the outlier, or they're going to go first in their family and be away, and that can bring about some challenges. When it comes to distance, specifically for a parental relationship, one thing that I noticed was a big concern was the fact that I'm not seeing my child daily.
Right.
There's FaceTime, but there's a big difference between FaceTiming someone in a dorm room or them living with you and coming home, and you're able to notice different changes in behavior.
Right.
You're able to notice, you know, that they are up or down. You're able to notice that they're happy or sad. And typically, more often than not, children that live at home are sharing a little bit more. But either way, even when the child is at home or a student is at home, there's still kind of like this unction inside of them to adult.
Right.
And then you have the tension of, but I'm still under my parents' home, right?
And how do you do that?
Right, I want to be a student, I want to experience college in all its glory, but I also am saving money, or for whatever reason, I'm going to stay at home.
Yeah.
Maybe the college is just close.
And that, in that case, it might be more, how do I kind of come out of under my parents' wings a little bit more and develop that more independent identity for myself, even if I'm maybe living together with my parents.
Yes.
And that is a tension, I think, for a lot of people. What about even just first-generation college students? And I think that's something that can really impact a family and the dynamics in the family around sort of expectations. And there's certainly, I think, a lot of pride for families when they have the first person in their family to go to college. But sometimes that can be maybe kind of threatening or uncertain, or the families might be especially concerned about how am I going to support my child or mentor them when I never went to college myself. So, yeah.
Absolutely. One thing that I've experienced with many first-gen college students is that there is this intrinsic resilience, curiosity, tenacity inside of them to be the first and to overcome any type of obstacle that's thrown their way. Oftentimes, the tension comes, just like you said, when there's a parent that is internally feeling like I don't really have anything to give them because I did not experience that. And many times I encourage parents to, there's always a sphere of influence around. They can reach out to others that may have experienced a collegiate setting and be able to provide guidance. And at the end of the day, whether you're in college or not, your parent is still your parent.
Right, yeah, exactly, and still there can be respect, and they can help you navigate things. They don't necessarily have to know the ins and outs of how do you register for courses to be able to help support you.
Right, and in the same note, and I might be jumping ahead, I think it's great, especially with students, that they take on that responsibility in the beginning, registering for classes, doing any prerequisite work that they need to do over the summer, initiating conversation with different clubs and organizations or their professors. That's something that mothers and fathers can do and absolutely will do, but it's definitely great to have, there's nothing like being contacted by a student as an admissions counselor.
Right, and seeing them taking that responsibility for
absolutely.
and just really stepping up to the plate. And that sounds from a real parenting perspective, because I would love to move into talking a little bit more about some of the parenting dynamics here. And from a parenting perspective, that the importance of helping your child as they're leaving for college, as they're navigating college, helping them to know that they can do things on their own and that that's a really healthy step for them in that relationship. And maybe parents need that reminder, sometimes even maybe more than the students themselves, to say, maybe I don't need to step in here and figure this out. Maybe this is an opportunity to say, well, why don't you try to figure this out and let me know what you discover.
Absolutely. Best question ever. If you're taking notes, if you're listening out there, wherever you are, when your child comes to you with whether it's, no, if it's life or death, that's different. But if it's, tension or something that didn't go their way, they're not in their sphere of equilibrium, so to speak. Number one question you can ask them is, what are you going to do about it?
Oh, that's good.
How are you going to handle it?
Mm-hmm.
What is your plan to make this better?
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because speaking of parenting issues, obviously the one thing you hear so much about parents of college students today is this term of helicopter parents.
Helicopter, lawnmower. I can think of a couple others.
Yeah. When you were working with families in your role in admissions, and even maybe some things you see now in your role as pastor, like how do you see that helicopter dynamic play out, or lawnmower, or however you call it, but how do you see that play out, and then what do you think is the impact on families and students?
Well, first, I wholeheartedly believe that it is coming from a good place.
Yeah.
We're the generation where, we were very kind of like coddled. There was this, big push that, you have to be comfortable at all times, and when you get out of that comfort zone, you just change it to be comfortable again. And so one of the detriments of a fixed mindset, so to speak, like that, is our generation, I say we because I'm in my early 30s, it can be difficult sometimes to deal with adversity. It can be difficult sometimes to hear the word no. And it absolutely is so painful to wait.
Yeah.
It's very painful to wait. We have our instant gratification society, really. And so that can have an impact, because what happens is, if mom and dad have always been that rescuer, so that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Mom, dad, my professor didn't do this, or they gave me a C, or they gave me a B, or, they don't like me, all of these things. And really, it's going to be dependent upon how the parent chooses to react. Mm-hmm. Because if the parent jumps on the bandwagon with the student and without any, other knowledge about the situation, it really can breed an unhealthy relationship between those on the campus and those that are at home.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, too, I know we're kind of targeting today's program more for people who are right in that stage of sending their kids to college, but if we have people who are out there who are really maybe a few years away from that transition, I just think it's important to start reading that in your kids really early on. And I'm guilty of that myself. I will never forget when my older son turns 9, and I realized I was still pouring his cereal for him at the breakfast table, and I was like, we're halfway to college, and I have got to make sure that I'm preparing him. And I wasn't preparing him because I was doing more for him than he could, when it was things that he could do for himself. And so I'm sure, guilty of that some of the time, but I think for parents to really understand that that's an important part of preparing your child for adulthood, is helping them to learn to do things for themselves.
And not just the actual do or execution of an action, but it's really more importantly, I believe, the thought process of critical thinking, of being able to think through from point A to B. Okay, that didn't work. C didn't work. Okay, maybe I need to go all the way down to F, right?
Yeah.
Being able to have some critical thinking skills. And if you really think about it critically, that is going to propel them for the rest of their life, not just in college, but also on their first job.
Right. Yeah, those are skills that they're going to need in pretty much any setting. So thinking, though, I think one of the things that drives parents toward that, because like you said, I agree with you. I think as a parent, I wasn't pouring my son's cereal because I wanted to make him incapable of getting breakfast for himself for the rest of his life. I was trying to help him and maybe make things move quicker, but just the anxiety of him potentially spilling that cereal all over the breakfast table. And I think it is a lot of anxiety that drives parents to do things that for their children that the children can do for themselves. And so I guess, could you speak a little bit about what you saw or what you've seen and some of the anxieties that parents might be having, especially, and you've already touched on this a little bit, but maybe speak a little bit more deeply about, like, what are parents nervous about happening as they're looking for that transition?
You know, when it's all said and done, and I look at the culmination of conversations and emails, or just in general, parents were nervous about or concerned about their child not doing well, failing, looking bad, being embarrassed, being sad, being lonely. You know, all of the things obviously that we don't want our children to feel. We don't want to feel ourselves. But I did notice that a lot of some of those anxieties, the student didn't share at the same magnitude as the parent. But the parent was putting that on the student, putting the weight of the parent on the student. And so now it's a bigger deal, because if I'm walking in the woods with my dad and I'm 7 years old and my dad runs out scared, then I'm scared. But if my dad is like, oh no, that's nothing to worry about, I'm looking at context clues, I'm looking how he's how he's reacting, and that's the way that I'm typically going to react. And so it's so vital that parents take a deep breath and really think about the fact that, hey, how I am reacting to this, that is, I am showing my child what to do.
That is so true.
Regardless of my words, it's how I reacted.
And it's hard as a parent today, especially, I mean, you hear about shootings and the increasing rates of mental health issues among teenagers and college students, and all that you see about sexual assault on college campuses. So, I mean, I totally agree with you. For parents, they need to manage their anxiety and really think about what they're modeling for their children. And then at the same time, as a parent, how do you have peace with sending your child off into this big, scary world when in the midst of all these very real risks and threats?
Yeah, absolutely. And, for me, I'm a man of faith, and my parents were people of faith, and so that was an important contributing factor to the peace that we had in our lives. But, you quickly realize that the main thing is making sure that your child is making healthy and safe decisions. And then some of the other decisions that they make may not be the ones that you want them to, but at the end of the day, are they going to lose their life over it? And that's it sounds pretty drab, but that's really kind of the question that we should be asking ourselves. And when our students come to us, maybe, and they have a group of friends that we didn't expect that they would have, or that's contrary to how we were raised. That's not a time to overreact and show anger. That's a time to your child is actually giving you a precious gift of saying, hey, this is something I'm curious about. This is a group that I feel welcomes me, or whatever, and it's time to just ask some good questions.
Try to understand.
Yeah.
Talk with them.
Something as simple as, how did you all meet?
Yeah.
Instead
of immediately going to this place of like, oh my gosh, my child is making all these bad decisions, and but really focusing on keeping that strong relationship with your child, no matter what happens, because there are going to be difficult things, even if it doesn't affect your child specifically, but if it's their friends or something that happens on their campus or just in the news, and they're hearing these difficult things, to keep that open communication. And I don't know, I tend to think that there's probably a lot of college students who keep a lot from their parents because they don't feel their parents are going to.
Absolutely, and it has a lot to do with the reaction. I typically would tell my students, if there's something that you don't think your parents should know, then your parents probably should know it. Right, and it wasn't a knowing as of, I'm going to get you in trouble. It was a knowing of, if we don't know the truth, if we don't know the whole circumstance, then how in the world are we going to be able to coach you and guide you? And so it's imperative that parents, especially of college-age children or youth and those on the way to college, really manage the way that they react to information or situations with that child, because you don't want to cut that off. You want your child to know that, hey, if there's something going on, the first person I can call is my mother or my father. But you also want them to be aware of any resources that the college may make available.
Right. And so and I want to talk a little bit more about that too later around the resources, but I think to stay with the topic of kind of maybe some differences that might come up between college students and their parents or their families, and obviously a lot of times for a lot of college students it's a time of a lot of exploration and maybe, wow, my parents really tried to teach me this, but now I'm not so sure, or my roommate has a different faith background or a different set of values that I have, and so I think there can be a lot of sort of questioning or reevaluating beliefs. And so what suggestions would you have for how, both on the student side and the parent side, how they can kind of navigate some of those value differences that might come up during the college years?
Absolutely, and it goes back to keeping that open line of communication, but also kind of realizing, hey, I have a young adult right here. You know, it's kind of like the first time that, you know, I'm walking my dog and she gets off the leash. It's probably a harmful analogy for a kid and a dog, but, you know, I had to kind of trust that she wanted to be around me. I had to kind of trust that even though she's going to run to the next dog or run a little farther, you know, away than I would like, that she's always coming back to where she feels loved. She's always going to come back to where she's literally fed. She's always going to come back to where she feels secure. So if you continue to create that environment, then no matter how far the child may go, they're going to come back. They're going to come back and they're going to share. They're going to share.
Yeah, and that really goes back to what you had said at the very beginning of the program about kind of parents often worry, have I instilled these values enough? And they may, during the college years, feel like, oh gosh, you know, they didn't sink in, but maybe they did, and there's just that time of kind of testing boundaries or reevaluating things. But if you have really, as a parent, established those values early on, then most likely your child is going to sort of come back around to those. It just might be, it might take some time, and being patient and understanding in that process and not maybe trying to force your child, but kind of like you said earlier, just keeping that open line of communication, maybe more being curious about it rather than trying to say, well, you're wrong, you know,
because that always works.
Students love that,
right?
Being told that they're wrong, and you can really drive a child or young adult of that age away if that's the tone as a parent that you take, right?
Yeah, and you know, for prime example, there wasn't necessarily don't do this, but first week of college, very first week of college, I walked across the street from my college. It was about 4 or 5 of us, and we all got tattoos.
Oh,
first week, you know, first week of college, and it was just like one of those, like, I felt like it was a rite of passage.
Yeah.
And so, you know, getting a tattoo is different than someone experimenting with, you know, a drug or something that could lead to some really poor life choices. So it's about kind of like evaluating, okay, what's the severity of this change? What's the severity of this action that took place? And at the end of the day, is it more about my child living a life where they feel fulfilled and that they don't have to hide themselves, or is it more about, you know, what the neighbors are going to say, or what members of my church will say, you know?
And that's such a great example, because I can only imagine if I was your mother in that situation.
Oh, I did it for like at least a year, because it was somewhere she, you know, until I went swimming, she didn't see it.
I mean, imagine that first week, and then you're like, oh no, he's going to drop out, he's going to get on drugs and all these, you know, this other thing. It's like to bring yourself back to, like, the reality is, it's a tattoo. He did it with a group of friends, and, you know, like, kind of, not go down the path.
Yeah, thinking back, there could have been a wedge driven if she would have reacted like, oh my gosh, you know, you're going to hell or something, you know. But instead she said, did it hurt? You know, and what does it mean? you know, all of these, and so now it was giving me an opportunity to share who I was and who I am, and so that was a cool reaction. Now, I don't know what she was doing on the inside.
Right, but she handled it great.
Yeah, you know, she realized at that point, like, it's not going anywhere.
And that there was a point, I mean, not just that specific example, but as a parent just thinking, I think one other thing we can learn from your mom in that situation is that, you know, if there was any element that at which you were doing it as sort of an act of rebellion or questioning, then that other reaction, the real extreme, kind of driven you further down that path of rebellion. But that's a great story. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and you know, because it wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't about like, oh, you know, we're not supposed to we shouldn't have tattoos, or I don't know, you know, no one in my family has tattoos. It was really a curiosity, like, hey, I like art and I want to collect a piece, and does it really hurt like people say? You know, I've always kind of been that kid, so I think she was expecting it.
She knew something was going to happen.
Yeah.
That was going to be the tattoo.
Yeah.
And that's probably a good lesson for parents too, that something's probably going to come up. If you, as a parent, expect your child is just going to go off to college and be going to bed at 9 p.m.
Doesn't happen, especially not the first month.
Healthy watermelons, making great friends, and getting straight A's, like, you know, maybe that'll happen. We wish for all the parents out there that is what would happen. But for the most part, maybe having some expectation that, okay, there's probably going to be some bumps in the road along the way with this transition, and maybe expecting that and working to prepare for that.
Yes, having or allowing the room for your college student to create their routine and their schedule is so imperative. It's so different. Another just quick example, you know, there was a point where we had a curfew, you know, like high school, late high school, senior year, we're driving, but, you know, it wasn't necessarily like enforced, especially like on the weekends, you know, it's just like, come home. But no matter what, we were going to church the next day, or, you know, if it was a Saturday or something. And so over time, I realized that I wanted to be asleep at a decent hour.
Yeah.
That's so much more impactful than someone saying, get home, you know, get home by this time. And that's not saying don't give your children curfews, but, you know, it's just an example of how I was able to live through that and make that decision on my own, and that lasts a lot longer.
Yeah, I have a good friend who has the same thing, who's recently sent their daughter to college, and she was saying that the same thing. She said that she didn't give a curfew, but she said, well, how did you feel when you stayed up and you got 2 hours of sleep and had to go to this meeting or this class or whatever the next day, instead of the real hard curfew. And I think that is important. And we through a lot of our different outreach for parents of teens and directly toward teenagers, we encourage parents as they get, especially as your teenager gets older, assuming they're showing at least a little bit more maturity along the way, to really shift the way you think about parenting, where you're trying to protect your kids when they're young, and really you're preparing to launch them. And the more you just give strict rules all the time with no explanation or no opportunity for your kids to think about it, you're not really preparing them for that point where they will have to make all these decisions for themselves.
Right. There has to be some type of conviction in it.
Yeah.
You know, I can follow rules, but, you know, obedience is different than just following a rule. Obedience is me on the inside saying, okay, this is something that I want to do.
Yeah, and it feels better when
it feels better.
Right? So let's shift a little bit and talk about the students.
Yeah.
Because obviously it may be that a college student, or even if we have mostly parents that are watching, to think about what their mindset is for their students. So especially, I think one thing that's really interesting from a relationship perspective for our college students is that we tend to think of it as a very individualistic season of life, and you're kind of breaking free from a lot of the norms of your family and maybe making friendships. But you know, it's a lot about individual development, but there are so many relationship concerns too. So can you talk a little bit about some of the different relationship dynamics that college students might be looking at?
Absolutely. So you have the dynamic between the parent. You have the dynamic between maybe some cousins or any other college age siblings. You have the dynamic between the friend group that they had, especially in those latter years of high school, and where they are and what's happening with that group. You have the dynamic between professor and student. You have the dynamic between roommate or multiple roommates and student. You have the dynamic between, any mentor that may have been in their life and now, maybe they're far away or they're trying to find someone else. So college-age students are bombarded with myriad relationships. And then they're having to navigate all of them and figure out, okay, which ones are going to be a part of the new me, so to speak, and which ones are not. Which ones are not. So
so really kind of making a lot of choices about relationships, and especially kind of leaving that friend group behind can be a very sad thing, I think, or for some people I think it's very exciting to be kind of moving on to a new social scene. But then, just some of the other relationships that, like that professor-student relationship is one that can be very different from what your high school teachers look like. And so there's just a lot of different relationships coming, and maybe not a lot of information or guidance for students on how to navigate some of those relationship concerns.
Many times students are just gravitating towards, what may seem right, that guttural instinct that's inside of them. But no matter what, when a student is encouraged, when a student is provided some clear guidance about what next steps could be, that they're probably going to gravitate towards that relationship or that person. Sometimes there are those that seek out people who think differently than them. A lot of times in the very beginning, though, it's going to be about finding my squad, finding my group. Who are the people who, kind of think like me? Maybe it starts very macro with something political, and then works its way down to who you love. But in the beginning, a lot of times it's who's like me.
Especially if you don't maybe know people on your campus and you're kind of uncertain about who to connect with, it's easy to gravitate. But there's some real value for students. I think we definitely want to encourage students to keep in mind that there is a lot of value in building relationships with people who are not like you.
Absolutely, and I'll give a disclaimer that on this campus, I feel like it's I see so many examples of the opposite, of seeking out those who are different, seeking out those who have different thoughts, seeking out those who didn't grow up with me or lived in my same neighborhood, and so that is extremely healthy, and for a global economy, the student really does themselves justice, because the more interactions you have with someone who is different than you, the better your global perspective, the more you're going to have empathy, the higher your level of emotional intelligence, the least likely that you're going to operate in a fixed mindset, so it's helpful all around.
And I imagine that then can lead to probably some kind of inner turmoil for students as they're kind of navigating their family relationships and then all the values that their family has tried to instill in them, and then all these new people that they're interacting with. And so, I guess from my perspective, I think it's really important for college students to really embrace some of that tension that might come up in some of that, and just know that they don't have to totally abandon their own values that they have, but then to create that space to be able to interact with other people. And that's a difficult thing to do at any age, but especially when you're maybe 18, 19, and just kind of first having some of those experiences.
Yes, I know it does exist because I experienced it with some students that are independent thought, and can go in a situation and not necessarily be changed by it, but be open to it. And that's something that more college-age students need to be able to grab hold to, that because something is different doesn't make it wrong. It's just their perspective. It's their perspective.
And maybe they can learn or try to understand. Almost the same thing you were saying earlier about how parents should take that, be curious and try to understand the college student. And then college students, that's a great kind of basic relationship skill for them to be developing.
Absolutely.
And so let's think a little bit also about kind of for the college students and how can they stay close with their parents and their siblings, even when they're at college, whether they live at home or especially if they live far away.
You know, I am a firm believer in creating some type of schedule or routine. I mean, I call my grandmother still to this day at 7 p.m. every Sunday evening, you know. So creating a schedule or routine where they know, okay, during this time I'm here, I'm at school, but I'm going to be able to, you know, share my day with my mom or my dad, and maybe it's daily in the beginning, maybe it's weekly. You know, that's something that you have to kind of discuss. But what it helps avoid are all those fires, and that's what breeds anxiety and stress. Is first day of school, you can't find, you know, your dorm or you can't find your class, and you call mom, who's not on campus. Who can't do anything to help, and then it's like this whole cycle where some moms will like break down and be like, oh my gosh, my baby's there, I knew I shouldn't have sent you down the street, and then some moms will be like, well, you know, put it in your phone or ask someone. You know, it's okay in the very beginning. One of my favorite phrases that we said at the university was, in the beginning, it is so okay to be creepy. I mean, you make eye contact with someone, you go talk to them. What dorm are you living in? You want to go to dinner? You know, it's okay to do that. So, you know, when it comes to keeping those family relationships, I think that it's important that to create some type of traditions as well. Traditions go hand in hand with college, and so, you know, you can create a tradition that happens, you know, when someone goes to school, or a lot of times my mom would, I was close, but my mom would like send different little care packages, and, you know, it would be something that I really liked in there, or something just encouraging that, you know, I know you told me you had a really hard chemistry test, organic chemistry test, but you know what, whether you get an A or a B or not, I know that you studied, I know you did your best. You know, just that took a lot of weight, acknowledgement of effort, not necessarily the outcome, but acknowledgement of effort or lack thereof.
Right, so either way,
it goes hand in hand.
The point is, though, it sounds like that she cared for you, and she really showed you that she cared, whether it was through the care packages or just knowing that you had that test, even if it wasn't, like you said, however you did, just knowing what was going on in your life and showing an interest in that, and just making that intentional effort to keep that relationship going, even when it's changing.
Absolutely, and my dad was there too, obviously. But being a military man, he definitely was all about independence. So.
Families obviously have very different ways of handling transitions, and that's I think that can fit with what you said too, because one family's tradition or one family's schedule, for some people, the thought of talking once a week might be like, that is too much.
Too long.
Or it could be like once a week, I need once a day, or multiple, like texting multiple times a day and then talking once a day or talking every other day. So, you know, and I don't think, unless whatever the level of contact feels unhealthy for someone in the picture, you know, then there's no rules, right? I mean, I don't think there's like hard and fast rules about, well, if you're not talking to your family once a week or texting them every day.
Well, I had a very bad habit of not calling and not checking in, and you know, my mom would, I think maybe she'd go like 2 or 3 days in the beginning, and then she'd say, okay, you know, you got to check in. I need to know you're alive and breathing and all of that good stuff. But she also had, like, I feel like little people out there, like little birdies filling in, like where I was.
She got it. Well, today really.
Right. She had a network, a village. Yeah, she had a village of people reporting back.
Well, and I just think, too, like, do you have any thoughts on how those students and the parents or other family members, I mean, there's so many possible benefits of technology here. We often think of technology as a really bad thing or as a potentially bad thing or a distraction when it comes to relationships. But really, it can be a great tool for connecting, especially when you're not living under the same roof.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when there's birthdays, bar mitzvahs, whatever the case may be, and typically you would be there, but you're away for school, it's a great time to connect. You know, it is a great time to FaceTime. I think from the student's perspective, something that one of my parents used to say was so sweet about her son. This was her son, that on those instances, he would send his mom care packages. You know, just saying like, I'm okay, or, you know how back in, you know, when you were younger, you like draw pictures, and so he would like draw pictures, and, you know, on, typically you're home for Mother's Day, but he did like this whole little like fold out big card that he drew, like with his thumb, you know, with his handprint or something, just letting the parent know that you didn't forget about them, or your grandparent, or someone, you know, that was close to you.
Yeah, oh, that's really neat.
Yeah.
Wow, I hope my children someday treat me like that. When they get out of college, that would be really nice. So let's see. So let's talk a little bit more about traditions, because you mentioned traditions. But so let's say families, I think that can be a real challenge, because maybe you've had these traditions like every birthday, you know, you always would go to the restaurant that the birthday person chooses, and then, you know, maybe there's a present that they get that morning or something, and now they're not at home on the birthday because they're away at college, or whatever the sort of differences might be, even holidays sometimes, because
especially if you're an athlete, or just depending on if you're going to pay to travel back home or something.
Right, people may not be able to afford that. So how can families maybe adapt transitions as they enter into this phase?
I think the acknowledgement of the void is important. I don't think anyone gets anywhere by not acknowledging the fact that you miss someone, or not acknowledging the fact that you are homesick. But it's important to find that support where you are. You know, there's a big phenomenon now called Friendsgiving. And so, you know, that's always an option. We'd have students who would do Thanksgiving before they left, you know, all together, and some would, you know, invite students with them, just depending on where they were, especially our international students. But you have to acknowledge that void is there, but you also have to acknowledge that for the most part, it's temporary. It's temporary.
Yeah. So even just remembering that, or say, well, you know, we may not be able to celebrate the birthday the way we've always done it on the birthday, but you'll be coming home for this break, or it's just a couple months till the summer, and we'll celebrate the birthday over the summertime, or whatever it might be. So
most college students just want money anyway. Just send me money, like whatever day, remotely close to my birthday.
Money, send money any day, right? That would be something college students would probably want their parents to hear. And so just in terms of kind of also, I think that is a great tie-in to kind of looking at some of the financial stressors that can come from college. And, you know, obviously you had an interesting lens on that from the admissions side, and I'm sure in the pastor role too, you know that financial burden of college is something we hear a lot about, even in the media.
Having a twin brother, having multiple siblings that are all college educated, it's expensive. I mean, let's face it, college in general is going to be expensive for people. And so what are some of your suggestions that you would have for parents and students for how to talk about these financial issues, how to navigate some of the financial stressors that can come up when it comes to college? So probably one of the biggest misconceptions, and there are colleges who do well with this if you have certain grades, but one of the biggest misconceptions was that this whatever college, you know, university A, B, C, D is funding my education. Regardless of what my grades are, regardless of what my test scores are, I'll just go whoever gives me the biggest scholarship. Maybe not even the best fit, but whoever pays the most, right? And so what I would start discussing, even as, you know, freshman, sophomore, junior year, and definitely when you're a senior in high school, is where's this responsibility going to lie? Is the majority of the responsibility going to be on the student? Or is it going to be shared? You know, do you have an uncle that's going to bless you with a college education? And to be realistic about where you're choosing. You can be a fan of a school without going there. But having those realistic conversations, because I'm telling you, I mean, I'm the generation, we're one of the first generations suffering under this heavy load of collegiate debt. You know? And in some instances, you know, if you get the right job and in the right time and in the right place, you're able to put a dent in it. But at the end of the day, you just have to be responsible. There are some that do have a certain amount of, believe that there's a certain amount of healthy debt. If you invest in a house, you invest in a car, and the car depreciates, the house appreciates, your education's for a lifetime. And so there's some that will formulate, okay, this is what I'm comfortable with. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that what you've set yourself up to receive from a school is going to be dependent on how you fill those gaps. Right. You know, how you fill those gaps. And I always say you have to treat scholarship searching like a full-time job. Mm-hmm. You know, yes, there's money out there, but you have to go for it. Right? And so many times by junior year, that's what they're using as a litmus test for whatever dollars you may be getting, and then somewhat into senior year. So it's really about having an honest conversation about the expectation and about the reality.
Right, because the worst thing would be to kind of get into college and not realize either as a student like how much debt you are taking on or what that's going to mean for you, or that there were just not clear expectations around who's paying, who's responsible, if the student has to work, and how much even, I think a lot of people don't even realize how much even things like you could have a $300 textbook for a class, and that
just
might
one.
be, for one class. You know, that might be only one textbook for one class. And, you know, a lot of universities are doing things to try to bring the cost of books down, and that's just one example, but really understanding what those costs look like and talking about them and having healthy conversations about it, because that can be a real stressor for parents and students.
It can be. I'm gonna go parental advocate here, and I'm gonna say it's a larger stressor for the parent. Right. Because the parent has that financial piece or that number tied into really their emotions, tied into their ability as a parent, and did I do this right? Should I have been saving more? Should I have done this? You know, all of these different questions can come up out of when it comes to, you know, how do you pay for college? And most parents want to give the student what they want, but it's really about what they need and setting them up for success afterwards too, because that's just as important. And it means nothing for me to graduate from so-and-so university, you know, and be able to brag about it, but I'm suffering afterwards.
Right, and that is such an important thing for parents who are in the space of sending their kids to college, to know that you're not any less of a parent if you're sending your child to a less expensive school.
There's thousands of colleges out here, and all of them have different costs and different things that they stand for, and missions and values. And so, you know, there's more than likely a college that fits you, that also fits your budget if you look.
And I think too, you know, I think kind of a big picture piece of it too, because as we're getting close to the end of our time and starting to think about tying this all together, but, you know, I just think having been a student or a professor at several different types of institutions, of colleges and universities, I think that it's really important for parents and students to know you can have a great college experience wherever you go. It's really, it's like all things in life. It's like what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And that could be the hometown public university that's right up the street from you, or it could be the Ivy League school, Ivy League, whatever it could be. But it's really about what you put into it. And I think if more parents really understood that and kind of let that frame some of their conversations about college, less about get straight A's at the best school that you could go to, and that's the only thing that success looks like.
Right, or not even straight A's, just go to the best school. Because it sounds better. Right.
You can get a great experience wherever you are. And then, so as a parent, it's like, okay, wherever my child is going, what can I do to help them have that best experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some parents are more involved financially than others, and it definitely can be dependent on need. But when it comes to an overarching best experience for a student, I think that this is a time where you have to shift the focus from being more of of giving information to be more willing to receive that information and to listen.
Yeah.
You have to continue to be encouraging. You have to, be a great coach. And coaches don't always say what you want them to say, but they typically are motivating you. And so you have to figure out what's the motivation for my son or my daughter and provide that for them. The last thing you want to do is create a relationship where they only come to you for money and they go to their friends for everything else. They go to their friends to be validated. They go to their friends when they're sad. They go to their friends, when there's a breakup. You want to be able to show yourself as a person that has their best interest in mind, but you're also open and willing for them to change.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. And I think that is kind of the last thing I'd love to just talk about for the last couple minutes here is just this idea of launching your kids to college and sending them away. It's part of just that broader picture of launching them into their life.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can parents kind of use all these different things that come up, whether it's talking about money or relationships or where's your class or, those kind of from the little kind of details to these really big picture issues. How can parents really make the most of this season to help get their child on a great path into young adulthood and beyond?
Absolutely. By far, in my experience, the thing that was done the least was reflection.
Mm-hmm.
You have to reflect. You have to actually sit down and have a time where you're either writing or recording or doing some type of note to say, okay, this is what's happened in these past 14 days or 30 days. What did I like about it? What felt good? What felt wrong? What relationship do I need to mend now? You have to have reflection about the decisions that have taken place or any of the experiences that have happened.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So really encouraging that reflection for parents, modeling it and doing it as well, and
Absolutely.
really encouraging that in their children.
And reflection, a part of that is also if there's something that is different or has changed, that you share that. And so it's never wrong for a parent to say, hey, TJ, when you called me that other day and you told me that you overslept for class for the third Monday in a row because it's hard for you to sleep when it rains, I was upset. I was disappointed because I want you to do better. But, maybe I shouldn't have yelled. Or maybe I shouldn't have, threatened to take your car away or something like that, which, maybe you should. But it's also worth being able to go back and say, okay, this is something that as a parent I wanted to do differently.
Right.
Because now you're mirroring for your child, okay, I don't have to be stubborn and stay with this. So if there's something that I think is different about me or something that I wish I would have said differently to my mom because I was frustrated, I can do that, and that's acceptable. So just mirroring that behavior of reflection and then going back and saying, okay, what are the things that were well, what were the things that weren't?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that because I think the older I get, the more I really feel like one of the most important things in life, and we talk about this a lot here, it was like one of the most important things for relationships is just that willingness to grow and learn, because it's a lifelong process, and none of us are perfect, and even for parents to realize, like, I may have some years on my child, but I've still got growing to do too, and that the way that you said that really makes me think that parents and children and students, college students, can really make this a season of growth and reflection and learning.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's a hard pill to swallow, but the parent has to realize that, hey, that's your kid. This is the product of your home, right? So maybe you'll get it right with the next one. Or there's always a grandkid.
There's always grandkids. There's always, and kids, they say too, it's like a lot of times kids don't fully appreciate their parents until they have maybe kids of their own, they get out on their own, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, all those things you were telling me, you were right, and I should have paid more attention to it. So, well, this has been very informative to me. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share as we wrap up here?
I'll just say that, at the end of the day, for any student to be taking the step to further educate themselves, it's a step in the right direction, and that we shouldn't, glaze over the fact that it's really the unction of the student too to want to better themselves from an educational standpoint, and that all of these ancillary, some of the noise that we get either from our neighbors or from other family members, it's just that. Who is funding the education and who is getting the education, those are the ones that should be involved in the decision making.
Yeah. And don't kind of, like, it makes me think that saying, don't lose sight of the forest for the trees.
For the trees,
but, just kind of like don't get so, don't forget about sort of the big picture when you're down in the weeds of trying to sort through all of these issues. But that this is such a positive thing for a college student to be taking these steps.
And it's a privilege. There's plenty of people in the world that would love to be, going to college, and we find ourselves talking about we didn't like the bedspread our roommate had, And that is a big issue, and it's like, we really have to, in all things, just give thanks and be grateful for the privileges that we are afforded here in this country. And with education, is it perfect? No, but it definitely could be worse.
And the same thing just as being a great opportunity for families to kind of grow and change together. So. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having
me.
me.
I really appreciated all your thoughts, and I'm sure that others who are listening to the program will as well, too. So thanks so much for being here. And for those who are able, before you leave our program, we do have a feedback form that's available for helping us to constantly improve and grow in these relationship boosters. And starting this fall, we're going to be starting back to our twice-a-month relationship boosters on the first and third Friday of the month from September through December. So our next one will be on Friday, September 6th at noon, and we're talking about parents, teens, and technology. So thanks so much again for being here, and we hope that you learned a lot that will help you in building healthy relationships in your own life as well.
Done. Off camera, off sound. That was so great.
I will say the little corner over there was not as quiet.
That was probably my fault. I don't know if I was about to have a cough attack, and I just had to decide, am I going to cough in the corner, or, and good thing I went out there.
Yeah.
So sorry about that.
I was worried about it.
Yeah, I was because I had a sip of water and it went down the wrong pipe, so I was holding it in for 2 minutes, and I thought, I can't hold this in anymore. I'm either going to cough all over or pass out. So I ran out there.
I think they were already noisy before you did.